We have the fishermen going out and getting lobsters and stuff like that, and bringing lobsters into a restaurant. I sometimes, because there's all different
We're
species
like
out there.
we're like in a glass bubble, just being primed to put a fork in its side.
I know it could be, but
yeah.
but you look at it this way. There's all different species. I've talked to so many people who said, "Hey, Earth is the only place that supports life out in the whole entire universe," which I look at them as totally crackpots. Because if you believe that, the universe is not going to ever stop. It's going to continue. Because what are you going to do? Put a brick wall up? A brick wall is going to take space. Right. But I'm sure there's species, just like us, right? We eat other animals that are not as intelligent as us. We even eat porpoises. We eat porpoises, we eat cattle, we eat everything.
Meat, which are probably the most intelligent mammal around, so yeah, we eat them.
Oh, yeah.
No, I know.
So,
so yeah.
You look at this. How many people, I did a show recently, like the missing in the U.S. National Forest, since 1900 to 2014. Between those years, there has been over 14,000 people who've gone into a forest and totally disappeared. I'm talking experienced woodsmen, campers, people with little kids that they find their kid's body, 5-year-old, 15 miles away up on the side of the mountain, with rivers in between. There's no way he could have walked it. But it makes you wonder, that many people in a national forest that disappeared in that time frame. Then you look at all the missing people in general off the streets and little towns and everywhere worldwide. I hate to say it. There could be a species of aliens out there that look at us like, we're like supplying McDonald's up off their planet,
Yeah.
It's a possibility.
No, it is. It really is. But I think, and of course you get in this whole, ancient alien, the whole Anunnaki, idea, Stitchin's, view, which is, we were actually created, as essentially hominoids were created to mine gold in Africa. That was his, thing. We're actually slaves and what have you, which that, there are some very compelling information, that has come out on that. And, it is an amazing thing, so, yeah, there could have, so we were created to basically, mine gold and to be more or less, a slave race, and but I think that, and of course, one of the stories that go along with that is that there were so many experiments, and they couldn't get the hominoids to do what they were doing, and so that was the whole divinity, where the story was they had put this divine essence in us, and they were able to capture it, and that was the demise of, and that's why we're not apes. That's why we've evolved to a certain degree. In fact, that's why we started eating protein. Our brains are in a chimpanzee. We're by far superior to that, and they track that down to us eating meat, protein. As far as that, our brains are by far bigger. So there's science. Science fiction gets really scary. And again, you start talking about artificial intelligence, which is a huge quantum leap as far as of what's going on. Recently, with all this program trading, I sit back and I'm absolutely flabbergasted as far as and that's essentially artificial intelligence. These bots that they're anticipating interest rates, and so they're basically selling the market off. And 40% of all that is done by computers.
Yeah,
so
that's scary too.
It is. They sense it. So all the science fiction, that you can think of, there's a certain line of plausibility, and of course, I don't think doesn't sound too attractive. Me being in the middle of two hamburger buns, But I also, my contention is that I do believe that there is a certain benevolent organization, and I've and it's been my research that actually this prime directive which is Star Trek stuff, that you're not supposed to that there are consequences for some of this stuff, because that's the only really excuses that I can think of as why, if some of these superior races, extraterrestrials, why they haven't completely conquered us and ate us all up, or whatever, or perhaps you are right. Maybe they're just dating us. Maybe,
yeah.
They're kind of, we're like the the cattle. We're like, it's like, we're gonna fatten this one up.
Oh yeah. Well, the abductions though. They could be inserting new genes in people, and it seems like I was thinking about this one day. You go back, let's say the 1400s, and then 1600s and 1700s. People were only in like the 5-foot range in height, and now what's the average height of a person? You're over 6 foot is the average height, and that's a lot of growth in that short a period of time. And it just sometimes I just wonder if some of the abductions, if they're inducing different genes into there was no way to tell back then. Medical doctors believe in bleeding for everything. So they didn't, there's been no way to trace anything.
There's a study right now at Stanford going on of abductees, and they claim that your DNA changes when you're, that they see DNA changes from people who've been abducted. They've got a study, I guess, of 500. And I do know this, that, this is a given. I dropped out of college 3 different times simply because I just had a boredom. I have the ability to do certain things that nobody in my family was able to do. So I think that there was a dramatic impact, for me. In fact, in my book, Giant Rock, one of the things I almost got a rec teacher fired because they were convinced that she had. There was a contest to pick the trash bag full of jelly beans, and the number came to my head. I wrote the number down, and it was the exact number. And they swore up and down that this her name. I remember her name, Cindy Clark, says that she had actually slipped me the number, which I did. And I was, it was one of the weirdest things. But there's certain gifts that you have as far as psychic gifts, mind reading skills. There's certain things that are really otherworldly that I've had no explanation, that none of my brothers and sisters have. So, is that the cause of that, or is it my channel or my pineal gland? I thought about that too, as far as why am I seeing these things, and why am I thinking, why am I me? Why me? And I kind of thought, well, the shock of having the events happen, it transforms you, and the pineal gland, which is this third eye, is it doesn't shut, which generally for most everyone else, it calcifies and it closes. So there's certain things that I believe that along the same thread in my own experience that I've had, that and in comparison to my own, I have 6 brothers and sisters that literally, they're very pedestrian. They've had completely different lives, and there's absolutely no excuse for mine. And some of the things I've done, including writing a novel, writing a screenplay. I'd never done any of that before, but I seem to be able to adapt very quickly and learn things very, very quickly that my other family members, and there could be a whole litany of reasons for that, but I attribute it to this communication or this contact, with it. I believe it. So again, with the thread that you're saying, as far as the re-engineering and with some of the stuff and some of the science, and this is what really irritates me. There's such a fight against the whole realization, and it's been the past. It's been a cognitive dissonance that people don't want to believe or understand any of this, and which is fascinating in its own right. But Churchill, during World War II, they had the Foo Fighters, and the British pilots were coming back and being connected to all kinds of extraterrestrials. It was a big deal with all the pilots. They kept on running into UFOs all over the channel, going back and forth in Germany. And so he had actually, part of the inside of this whole story is that had contacted both Roosevelt and Truman and said, listen, if this ever gets out, this is Churchill, if this ever gets out, people will stop supporting government, stop paying taxes, and stop being good citizens. They were so worried about this pell-mell scare that they would lose control of the population.
I honestly I really think in that time frame they would. I mean, remember back was it in the 30s, Orson Welles, the War of the Worlds?
Yeah, War of the Worlds. Yeah.
There was actually people committed suicide over it because they thought the world was ending, and they got scared and killed themselves. And they got their guns out, ready to fight the aliens and stuff like that. Even at the beginning of the show, they broadcast this is nothing more than a radio play, but that part didn't sink in their mind. They got so scared of the show, not because I have listened to the War of the Worlds. I'm sure you probably have heard it, and if you look at it and listen to it, and you laugh because it's so phony. But in the 30s, you have to understand the education level of the average person, the atmosphere. Again, the only news they really heard was either on radio or in the newsprint. So when they heard it on the radio, they panicked. And you know what? I really do feel, I do feel right now, if a UFO landed anywhere and it was documented there was a UFO, and an alien even stepped out and said anything, I think civilization would start collapsing really fast. I really do, because people are getting, a lot of people believe in it, but if it actually happens, widespread where people see it, I don't think a lot of people could handle it. I think it would just bring out the most evil in most people.
I think also, too, there's, I think as far as this higher level of consciousness, that we need to get into that whole thing where we actually accept it and can actually, communicate with these extraterrestrials. I think would be a better mandate. As far as that, I'm worried about what also is a big concern of mine is a UFO false flag, where the government basically, who knows, we may have Dow 500, things are extremely, bad or difficult. There's panic in the streets. The worst, FEMA or black government, et cetera, comes out, and that they decide to use it as they have the technology to literally project these things. In fact, some people claim that these the 9/11 whole thing was one big simulation, and that just because of the impossibilities of you get in that whole subject matter, but that was just one big holographic vision of those planes running into the towers. Meanwhile, they're being bombed. Meanwhile, they're being blown up, systematically blown up. Floor by floor by floor by floor. Now we have the technology. In fact, that was part of an actual CIA mandate that was done in the 60s against Castro. So even back then, they were actually talking about doing that.
Well, it's interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is so intriguing to me, and I'm getting so many people texting me right now as we're talking. But, you take the Twin Towers, there has actually been a credible person that came out and said weeks before the towers went down and the planes went into them, there were people going in there and doing strange things. Like he thought they were planning explosives and all that stuff. And this person actually was involved with the government, one of the major, agencies that you don't want to deal with. And he said that they were actually